What if I told you a group of young men fell asleep and woke up 309 years later? Not in a dream, not in a legend, but in a story that changed how people believed in life after death. This is the unbelievable story of the Companions of the Cave. In one of the years, on a day of festivity, the great commanders of the army stood on the right side and the special advisors on the left side of Decianus. One of the commanders informed him that the army of Persia had entered the borders. Upon hearing this news, he became so distressed that he trembled, and the crown fell from his head. One of his ministers, named Tamlica, said to himself, "This man thinks he is a god. If that were true, why would he become so distressed? Moreover, he possesses all the attributes of a human." His 6 ministers used to gather every day at the house of one of them, and that day it was Tamlica's turn. He had prepared fine food for his friends, but despite this, he appeared troubled and did not reach for the food. His friends asked about his condition. He said, "Something has settled in my heart that has deprived me of food, drink, and sleep." They asked about the matter. He said, "I have deeply reflected upon this lofty sky, which stands without pillars, and upon the one who set the sun and the moon as 2 radiant signs in motion within it, and the one who adorned its expanse with stars. Then I looked at this earth and said to myself, who brought it out of the water and spread it out? Who calmed its instability with mountains? Then I reflected upon myself and said, who brought me out from the state of a fetus from my mother's womb? Who provided me with the pleasant milk from my mother's breast and nourished me? And finally, who raised me? From all these matters, I understood that all of this has a creator, a maker, and a sustainer, one who is certainly other than Decianus. He is the King of kings and the sovereign over the heavens." When he expressed these words with clarity and sincerity, what came from his heart settled in the hearts of his companions. Suddenly, they all fell at his feet, kissed them, and said, "Through you, God has called us from misguidance to guidance. Now tell us what we should do." Tamlica stood up, sold some dates from his orchard for 3,000 dirhams, took the money, and they mounted their horses and left the city. After traveling 3 miles, Tamlica said to them, "Brothers, kingship and ministry have passed. The path of God cannot be traversed with these expensive horses. Dismount so that we may walk this path on foot. Perhaps God will open a way for our closed affair." They released their horses and set out on foot. That day they traveled 7 farsakhs swiftly, but their feet became wounded to the extent that blood dripped from them. A shepherd came to meet them. They said, "O shepherd, do you have a drink of milk or water to offer us as guests?" The shepherd said, "I have whatever you desire, but I see your faces as the faces of kings. Why are you here? I think you have fled from Decianus, the king." They said, "O shepherd, the truth is that we cannot lie, but if we tell the truth, will you not cause trouble for us?" Then they narrated their story. The shepherd threw himself at their feet, kissed them, and said, "Brothers, what has entered your hearts has also entered mine. But allow me to return the sheep to their owners and then join you." They waited for a while until he returned after delivering the sheep, and his dog accompanied him. The youths looked at the dog. Some said, "There is a fear that it may reveal our secret with its barking." But no matter how much they tried to drive it away, it refused to leave, as if it were saying, "Let me protect you from your enemies. I too am a traveler on this path." These 7 continued on their way, while the dog followed them, until they climbed a mountain and reached a cave. At the entrance of the cave, they found springs and fruit-bearing trees. They ate and quenched their thirst. When the darkness of night fell, they took refuge in the cave, and the dog stretched out its forelegs at the entrance, keeping watch, while they fell into a deep sleep. The sleep of the companions of the cave lasted for 309 years. Thus, it was a sleep resembling death, and their awakening was like resurrection. The Quran says, "And thus we raised them so that they might question one another." One of them asked, "How long do you think you have slept?" They said, "A day or part of a day." This uncertainty may have been because they entered the cave at the beginning of the day and fell asleep, and when the day had ended, they awoke. Therefore, at first they thought they had slept for 1 day, but in the end, since they could not determine the duration of their sleep, they said,
Your Lord knows best how long you have slept.
They were extremely hungry and needed food. Thus, their first suggestion was, take this silver coin that you have and give it to one of your companions, and send him to the city so that he may see which cellar has purer food and bring some for you according to your daily need. But he must exercise utmost caution and must not make anyone aware of your situation. For if they become aware of you and gain control over you, they will either stone you or return you to their religion of idol worship, and in that case, you will never attain salvation or success. Finally, the one assigned to purchase entered the city, but his mouth remained open in astonishment. The structure of the buildings had completely changed. The faces were all unfamiliar, and the clothing had taken on a new form. Even the manner of speaking and the customs of the people had changed. The ruins of yesterday had turned into palaces, and the palaces of yesterday had become ruins. On the other hand, his own appearance was also strange and unfamiliar to the people. His clothing, manner of speaking, and his face and appearance were all new to them. Perhaps this drew the attention of some people toward him, and they began to follow him. His astonishment reached its peak when he put his hand in his pocket to pay for the food he had bought. The seller noticed a coin that dated back 300 years, and perhaps the name of Decianus, the tyrant king of that time, was engraved on it. When the seller asked for an explanation, he replied, "I have only recently obtained this coin." Gradually, from the signs and evidence, it became clear to the people that this man was one of those whose names they had read in history from 300 years ago, and whose mysterious story had been discussed in many gatherings. He himself also realized the deep and long sleep they had experienced. This story spread throughout the city. At that time, a righteous and monotheistic ruler governed, but understanding the issue of resurrection and the revival of the dead after death was difficult for the people of that society. Some of them could not believe that a human being would return to life after death. The story of the companions of the cave became a strong and clear proof for those who supported the resurrection. Therefore, the Quran continues the story, saying, "Just as we caused them to sleep, we awakened them from that deep and long sleep and made the people aware of their condition, so that they might know that the promise of God regarding resurrection is true, and that there is no doubt about the coming of the hour at the end of the world." They thought they had slept for a day, but the world had moved on for centuries. Buildings changed, people changed, time itself changed, but one thing didn't: the truth. Their story became a living proof that life after death is real. So the question is, if you woke up after 300 years, what would you believe? Subscribe for more powerful stories that make you think.